Welcome to Heartland for Children's Let's Talk About It podcast, where we provide education and resources for family matters in Polk, Highlands, and Hardee counties. We're so glad that you've joined us. So now, let's talk about it.
Welcome to Heartland for Children's Let's Talk About It podcast. My name is Natalya Clemens. I am the Community Engagement Specialist here at Heartland for Children, and I am here today with Paige Ross. She is our adoption specialist here, one of our adoption specialists. And today it is, we are talking about adoption because November is National Adoption Month. Before we jump in, I just wanted to get to know you, Paige, a little bit more. I know that you have been in child welfare for a while, so give us a little bit about your background.
Yes, a long time. I always get a little uncomfortable when I have to count up how many years, and then I realize how many years it's been. Yeah. I was actually with an intern recently, and I realized that she was 5 when I started.
It's been
a hard day. It was a hard day for me. Anyways, so I actually started 15 years ago. I was just out of college. I graduated from university in British Columbia in Canada, and I came here, and within a few months I was working as a case manager.
Gotcha.
I got my degree in psychology, and all of my friends in Canada who had that degree were going to teach English, or nobody was doing anything related
to child welfare.
Yeah, to anything like psychology related. And I thought, I had this dream of being a social worker. So here I am in Florida, and it's been a long time. It's been 15 years, most of which is in adoption. So I think I counted at least 11 of that 15.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So why adoptions?
So I originally just fell into it. There was a opening. It was only with teenagers. It was with the first agency I worked with. I think I'd only been doing case management for maybe a year or two. And so I did that for about a year, and I really liked it. I also realized I had really no idea what I was doing at that point. I mean, a lot has changed over the years in the system and what we know. So that's how it started. With some agency changes, I went back to case management, and then when a position opened up again, I was definitely on board and wanted to do that. So that's really, it just sort of happened. Like I don't think it was something I ever thought about to begin with, and then once you get into it, you kind of don't want to leave.
Gotcha.
I always say that with child welfare, there are lifers. There are people who come in. We come in really young and we stay our entire lives. And you'll hear a lot of people have been here 20 plus years. And,
Gotcha.
And then some people it's just not for them and they're not there very long. So.
Well, you have, I'm sure, just a wealth of knowledge when it comes to adoptions. And especially since you've been in this area, Circuit 10, which is Polk, Highlands, and Hardee County, what have you seen as some of the greatest needs that we have when it comes to adoptions in our circuit?
Yeah, so our greatest need is for families who are really open to older kids. So I would say more that 10 to 17 age range. We got a lot of teens who are wanting families. Yeah. And I think, sometimes they expect that a teen may not, but I have a lot of kids who really, really want a family.
Right. I mean, I've been on social media, and my favorite adoption stories are the ones where a 17-year-old is adopted, and I think it's kind of like this idea that why would a child who's 17 need to be adopted since they're going to be 18 and they're going to be an adult? Mm-hmm. Why is it so important to do that? Yeah,
and I ask people, I'll say, where do you go? When you're 18, where do you go for holidays?
With your family.
With your family, right? And so just because these kids are 18, it doesn't mean they don't need a family to go back to. Right. I don't think that's a need that ever goes away, whether you're 18 or 25 or 30 or 50, right? You're still connected to your family.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what are some of the common myths that you have heard over the years about adoption?
There's a lot of them.
Yeah.
So I think one of them is that it's expensive.
I've heard that one, yes.
Yeah, so I've had families call and say, I would have done this years ago, but I thought it was expensive. Mm-hmm. So there's a very big difference between private adoption and adoption from foster care, and there is a cost of private. That's about all I know about private adoptions. But there is no cost of foster care adoption. There's actually a lot of support. There's a lot of benefits that come from the system too. So,
Gotcha.
So that's definitely one that I hear. Also that you have to be married. That's not
okay.
That's
so
not
you
accurate.
You can be single,
divorced, widowed. We have no. That is not important.
Gotcha.
What we need are families who are safe and stable and can provide support and love and care to our kids. So that's one. Along with that, people also think maybe you have to own a home, and that's not true either. You can rent, you can live in an apartment, or you have to have a certain amount of money. That's not accurate either. You do have to be able to financially support your home and your family and add another kid without hardships.
Right.
But it's not like an income limit or anything.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
One of the things I was thinking about, probably something that families are considering is siblings as well. Can you speak to that when it comes to adoptions, about siblings and adopting?
So that's also a really big need that we have. It's hard to take in a lot of siblings. Even 3 is sometimes a lot for space-wise and just, what it takes to parent 3 kids, especially if you already have more kids at home. So families who are open to sibling groups. Actually, this year I had 2 families with sibling groups of 4
That's amazing.
that are being adopted in the next couple of months. And so that, that's not, it's not super common, but when it happens, we do need those families. That's
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
So on that story, do you have any additional stories that stick out to you that you'd like to share?
There are. That's another one. There's so many. I think one that stands out to me kind of this year, it's a teenage girl. She'll be 16 at the point she's adopted, and she met her adoptive mother this year, single mom. She has adult children. But they met at an adoption event, and it just really seemed to click, which is not always the case, and for good reason, right? Like, it's difficult to build relationships. It's a hard thing to do. Adoption is not easy, and so I think what stood out to me about this is that I think it's the way the parent approached adoption. She's very she's very much here to meet the needs of the kids and to here to be a healer and support her children, both her biological and adopted children, and really developing who they are and who they want to be. I think something that happens sometimes with adoption is that our adoptive families end up here because of some of their own losses, and that can make it really difficult. And so I think that one always stands out to me because I think from day one, she came into this with the right mind frame of parenting. So I think that one always kind of stands out as successful and why it's successful.
Tell me about these adoption events. What is that like?
They're really fun and they're interesting, and you kind of never know what you're going to get. So we had a picnic this year. We try to do a picnic every year. Only COVID messed that up the last couple of years. We invite our families who have approved home studies or working closely enough with us that they're almost there. We can vet them. We've done backgrounds. And then we have our kids come who don't have a family yet, or we call them our unmatched kids. And then we just hang out. Nobody talks about adoption. Well, let me say this: the kids do. The kids do. We don't want to tell them. We don't say, "Hey, you're coming to an adoption picnic for you to meet these families," but they all know why they're there. And so some of the kids really do talk to the parents about it and say, "Oh, you adopt me. You want to take me?"
Well, I think it's more than just the adoptive family. It's also important what the child feels. And I think the fact that you guys, I know you guys talk a lot about that you're really considering how that child feels, how that child looks at that family, and you ask, would you want to be a part of that family? It's really important for our adoptions team to really vet that and see if that child feels bonded and safe with that family.
And that takes a really long time. So I think that's actually makes me think about another myth. I think there's a myth out there that when we take this child out of the trauma, right? So we take them out of the trauma and then we put them into their adoptive home, that everything is going to just be okay. And the reality is trauma impacts our kids, and it impacts their brains, and it impacts how they respond and how they are in relationship. And so it takes it takes a lot of time and consistency. And so we really do want to allow that time to develop, and also to understand where the kids are coming from. So of course we want their opinion, right? Their opinion is important, but also understanding that that kids may need a lot of support to get there. It's a lot easier to say, well, no, I don't want to be adopted. So we get a lot of kids who say that, no, I don't want to, or no, I don't want to be here, I just want to leave. That's not really what they mean. What they mean is, I don't want to be hurt again. They've had a lot of loss. They've probably bounced around quite a bit. If these are kids that we're looking for unmatched families for, it means that no one else in their life, not a relative, obviously their parents didn't get them back, not a neighbor, not a teacher, there's no other person who committed to them. So it takes a long time of building that relationship to get them there.
That's some perspective. That's really good. So let's say I'm somebody who's interested in adopting, but I'm not ready, but I just want to, I've thought about it. I have a friend who I've seen it's a successful adoption, and I'm just thinking about it. What do I do?
So we have something we call an info night, and even though we don't have a night anymore because COVID happened and now everything is online, I just can't change my language. So we have an info night, which is now entirely by video, and so the first step is to call our admin assistant here at Heartland. And that extension, if it's just extension here, is 223.
Well, we can go ahead and put that on. We'll put it on the screen.
Okay, there you go. And so the first step is to do a short interview with our admin assistant. There are some questions that she'll go through. Many families will complete that, and then we can sign them up for the info night. And that is a video only about 20 or 30 minutes long that really just explains kind of what our process is, the kids that we have available. I don't mean specific kids, but in general what we're looking for, right? And just gives a little bit of history and or a little bit of ideas on what to expect. And then from there is an application packet that we go through and just see, is this the right time, right? It really does have to be the right time for your family. And so we definitely have families that they're going to make really awesome adoptive parents, just not right in this moment. And so maybe there's some things that they need to do, just to get there. And so that's important for us. We want to set people up for success. We want to set our kids up for success. And so that's kind of our next step. And then after that process, then we do have, we have our adoption training. We call it our Adoption 101. And that really teaches you about trauma. So, what is trauma? When does trauma happen? Because that's also another myth. There's a huge myth that kids who are removed at birth or in infancy or when they're very young either don't have trauma or have trauma that's a lot less than a kid who is removed later in life. That's just not true.
Because it's so common for people to be like, well, adopt a child that's really young because
they don't have
any trauma. The older ones have, and that's not necessary. That's another myth.
That's a myth. Trauma happens in utero. Trauma happens just from that separation from the biological mother. So that's just not true. And I think a lot of people, once they come through our class, they do open up on their age range because they realize that maybe what they thought was true isn't. So the other thing about adopting a teen is that you already sort of have some history to look at. You kind of know, how have they responded? How have they reacted? Where, with a toddler, you don't know what it's going to look like in 10 years. So, I always like to tell people that when they're thinking about age ranges. So we teach about trauma, we teach about the brain, so it's really important to understand the brain so you understand how you can parent to heal our kids. We know that the brain can change, and we know that this is, there are going to be bumps in the road. There's going to be bumps in the road forever, but that doesn't mean that we can't help our kids heal. It doesn't mean that they're not going to be successful or you're not going to be successful as an adoptive parent. The trick is knowing how to help your kid heal and then being committed to doing that. So I think the other big need that we have, and that sort of brings me to it, is that we need families who are open to learning. You have to come into adoption and being an adoptive parent with an open mind. Families who are kind of like rigid in how they view parenting and how kids should react and respond don't always do so well. just because it takes a different type of interaction with our kids to help them heal. It's very relationally based. It is about, interactions all day long. And so that's huge. So we want families who are open to that. And we teach you how. So it's not like you just kind of fly by the seat of your pants. Like, we teach you how to do it.
You've adopted. Bye. Good luck.
No. We have post-adoption supports too. Our post-adoption person here is awesome for, just talking you through things or getting you services or, whatever that might be. So, no, you're not alone.
Yeah. So let's say I've gone through the info night and I've gone through Adoption 101. What's the next step?
So it would be a home study. Every path is a little bit different for every family. So I can't say it's like A, B, C, D, and then you have a home study and then it's done. Like I said, it's got to be the right time. So we're a very transparent agency. We're very open with our families. So sometimes it's discussion about, what may need to be addressed or what, I can't say that there's a clear timeline.
Right.
But, once all that stuff is done, then it would be an adoption home study, which is a whole lot of paperwork on that.
So
I do hear,
I've heard families, and this is really common because anytime I talk about adoption with friends, they're like, I was just so scared for people to come into my house and they're going to judge me. And am I approved? I don't know. I hope they approve me. There's a lot of fear in a home study.
And I always kind of like, I don't want to say I giggle when they do this, but I'm like, it's okay. Like, I'm the same person that you just spent all this training time with. I have heard things like how many people buy new welcome mats when I'm coming. I'm like, I don't care about your welcome mat.
I love that. I never even thought about that.
I've had people like buy extra food for their freezer to make it look really full, even though they would never eat that stuff. And I was like, no, that's not.
That's funny.
The home study, my home study, I can't speak for other types of adoption, and it is different than licensing. Like apparently license checks temperature of butter and fridges. That's not us. Yeah. It's relational, just kind of like relational with our kids.
What are you looking for? What is it that you guys are looking for in a home study?
We're looking for just a family who is ready to take on a whole new way of life and like I said, learning how to parent from a trauma-based perspective and being in a place in your life that you can do that. You've got to be in a place where you are stable, your relationships are stable, your job is stable. Like all these other things really do have to be in a good place of stability because it is going to take a lot to help this kid through to the trauma that they've had. So our conversations are just very much about their life, like how they grew up and their relationships and their families and their parents and how, what they've learned from class and how they view parenting and what they think they would do and what are their strengths and what are their needs. It's really just a conversation. Just to get to know them. And then through that, I can generally pick out things that I think maybe they should focus on a little bit, or like, hey, this could potentially be a challenge for you, or hey, this is a really strong area for you. I also find that people don't realize their strengths. So as they're telling me about their lives and they're telling me about things, I'm like, that's a real strength for you, but they don't connect it to
they didn't see that would be valuable for a child. Yeah. Are there benefits to this? I know that we can talk all day about adoption benefits, but I think sometimes we think if we're adopting, then that's like, it's such a heavy cost. I could never financially do it. Are there benefits that the child could receive and the adopted parent?
For sure. One of the biggest benefits is the tuition waiver. So our kids who are adopted, there is a tuition waiver that allows them to go to any Florida public college. So there is that limitation until they're 28, and it will cover everything from trade school to associates, masters, PhDs, whatever
so they could be a doctor. Like they could go to school and become a doctor, and that would be paid for by the state.
So it's not paid for; it's a waiver. So there's no money changing hands. It's a waiver, and so if it's a public college in Florida, covered. It doesn't cover things like room and board and books and stuff like that. But as far as the tuition and lab fees go, that's a huge benefit.
That's a big deal.
That's also a big deal for people who might be thinking about teens. But I've had a lot of families say, well, I'd like to adopt a teen, but I'm not going to be able to afford to put them through college if I get them at 17. So there's some other benefits like ongoing supports, right? Our post-adoption
Yeah.
services. Sometimes people feel like they're
What does
going to
that look like? So you're not just saying, here's the kid, goodbye, good luck. What does it look like for me to have a support system after I've adopted?
Yeah, so we will call you 1 year after your adoption.
Okay.
But then other than that, we're always here. So it's not, with the hundreds of adoptions that we do every year, we're not able to reach out every month or anything like that. So we do a 1 year follow-up, but other than that, we are always here. So you call us, and I always tell people, please call. As soon as something just doesn't feel right, reach out, because usually it's something we can help you address before it kind of gets too challenging. So we can refer you to services. We help with those tuition waivers. We help with Medicaid. So, and the other big benefit is health insurance. Our kids will get Medicaid until they're 18, unless they're adopted at 16 or 17, and then it's till they're 21.
Gotcha.
So there, that's covered too. Sometimes that's a huge question. What about health insurance? But that's covered. There's I really could go on.
Yeah. No, that's good. And when you're talking about services for kids, what is that services, if you're referring me, what does that look like? I know counseling services, if that's needed. What else do you normally refer for?
Yeah, so that's the other thing we sort of learned over time. There's sort of the idea that talk therapy is sort of the only type of therapy. And what we know now is that certainly that can help with our kids, but there's a lot of other types of therapy that might be more beneficial. So there's, equine therapy, pet therapies, things like that. Neurofeedback is another one. And so we can link you to those services and try and help get those supports in place. The other thing is having service providers that understand adoption. It's really important to have adoption competent therapists and people who get that the needs of the kids are based on hurt and relationship. And so we help them heal through relationship. And so therapy, we don't want to just be focused on here, let's fix this child here. It's let's build our relationship together, and together we're going to help that child heal. So I think that's another myth, is that we're going to put them somewhere that will fix them, and that's not how it works. It's their relationship with us as the primary caregiver, as the parent, that's going to help them heal the most.
I love that. I love that this. I love our language in that we're talking about as partners, as teams, as families, as caregivers, as providers. What can we do to help not only our families heal, but our kids heal?
Yeah,
and that's important. Well, Paige, thank you so much for coming in and talking with us and sharing more about adoption this month. So we appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Heartland for Children's Let's Talk About It podcast. There is a great need for foster families who are willing to open their hearts and homes to teens, sibling groups, and children with special needs. To learn more, check out the description for resources or visit heartlandforchildren.org.